Okay, we are now live and being recorded. And I think I've lost track, Teresa. I mean, Heather, if this is our fourth or fifth GAB this chat this year, but we're growing. New people are coming. We're going through new things. We have a great presenter today. We're going to be talking about that. But I wanted to take the first couple of minutes and go over something that the Barron Center is engaged in. And I have Steve Hoover here. I don't have Heidi, who was my other person in it, or Sarah White. So I'm going to wing it here with Steve's help because he really is much more the researcher than I am. The Barron Center has been invited to participate in a retrospective assessment of connection impact. So this is a study that's being done by Dr. Matthew Smith from Texas A&M. He's needing 50,000 people, and what they're doing is going back and looking at programs, all programs, not just guided autobiography, but senior center programs, wellness programs, Meals on Wheels programs, anything where they're serving the public, and they feel like this program is possibly combating social isolation, developing connections with people. So that's what his goal is, to provide an instrument that after the fact, so usually in research, you do a pre and post test. So before you take guided autobiography, you take a test, this measure. And then after you take it, you take the test again. And then you'd measure to see if there was a difference. Did anything improve? And was it statistically significant or not? Well, this is a retrospective assessment. I've never participated in one before, but it's only given to people that have taken these programs. So again, guided autobiography is one program, but there's many of them because he needs 50,000 because he's developed this instrument, and what he wants to do is validate it and put it out in the market. And his plan is to write the article and publish it in the fall. So by September, he wants to do that. So we have through August to get, so I committed, I said yes, because we will be one of these 50,000 or 50 people, but we will also get the specific numbers for guided autobiography. So we will know, okay, did this measure increase ability to make friends? Did people feel less lonely afterwards, etc.? So I did it because I think that when we get those figures, it's going to help all GAB instructors, because all of you who've done this, you know what happens after you do it, and you see the benefits that people go through, but you don't. But if somebody said, okay, prove it, well, how do you prove it? And even this survey is going to be just a correlation. It's going to say, I mean, it could have been something else. It could have been something you ate that day that made it, change, and that you were better, you were more connected with people after it. But this is one way of looking at things, so that when we go to funders, or when you go to maybe your local senior center or the library and give the pitch about giving guided autobiography classes, you will have some fuel in your toolkit to say, here's what we can do, and we can prove it. We have these statistics, we have this backup to show you the benefits. Okay, any questions so far? Because I'm gonna, yeah, Robin, go ahead, unmute yourself. You're muted, Robin. There you go. Should be down on the bottom.
I was
down in the, there you go.
Yeah, hi. Well, I'm just going to throw something out in terms of, if we're using this data or this information to show that we have something, that there's evidence for what we're saying. And so the buzzword in, academia is evidence-based with a hyphen in the middle. We've had an evidence-based information that this program provides this. So I just want to give you those buzzwords, evidence-based. That's what everybody's looking for.
Yeah, and we need it, and we're going to get something out of it with these 50, and then we will be part of the bigger one, and the measure then can be used we can use it for our programs when it's done. But what now, he created the measure. It's only 13 questions. It's anonymous. It's, they're not going to ask you, the only demographics they ask you is the year you were born and your gender and your ethnicity. So there's nothing else in there that's going to be traceable back to you. So let me just put up, see if I can find it here, share with you the basic information, and I can send this to all of you. So what I want to do is, okay, now are you looking at the information sheet, or are you looking at the script? Does it say information sheet there on the screen?
Sheet.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, this is it. You're going to get this. This is the doctor. You go all the way through it. Why should you participate? Why is it being done? And at the end of it, it gives you all of his information, how to talk to him, how to reach him if you have any questions. And if you start the questionnaire and you say, I don't want to do this, stop. You don't have to keep going. And this little thing down here, this IRB, that's what I want to talk to you next about, because that's the Institutional Review Board. So let me see if I can get rid of that one. That's the Institutional Review Board. And that's what, I don't want to say this. The Institutional Review Board is, I don't know, Steve, you've done that and you sat on an IRB board. You want to tell them what the Institutional Review Board does?
It used to be called human subjects, and it's the idea that they protect people who are participating, and there are requirements in order for it to be approved by an institution to show that there's benefit and no significant harm to individuals, or they provide for ways of addressing harm. There's no harm in this. Well, technically there's always harm, but there's no real harm in this. So he's gone through the IRB process and it's approved. And when you go into the survey, you can click and get all the information on there. And then you click that you've agreed to participate in the study because you've reviewed it. You have to download it. And then you can continue through the study. So it's just validating the instrument at this stage. That's all he's really needing to do, is to collect large numbers of data to do the analyses for the validation, reliability, well, internal consistency of the instrument.
So for all of you who've joined us, this isn't exactly what we're going to do. This is kind of a precursor to our show today with Teresa. We are going to be, I just talked about the possibility, if any of you want to, I think we've already finished like 10 to 15 of them. And when we reach 50, he'll let us know. That's our number. I'm going to be sending you the link. I'll try to put it up in the chat. Of course, I forgot it, but for my IRB participation, I need to read this to you. So I'm just going to do this quickly. Thank you for participating in our community program, Guided Autobiography. We would like to know if you'd be willing to participate in a brief research study to see whether community programs like ours can help older adults, anyone really, improve their social connections and interactions with others. You are eligible for this study because you already participated in the program. So again, this is only for you who are GAB instructors or who have taken a GAB class. So if it's like Judith or somebody that hasn't been in a class, please don't take it. This is only for you who've done the class. The research will consist of completing a one-time short online survey. The survey only takes like 5 minutes to do, and will ask you about your demographics and what you thought about the guided autobiography session. No identifying information will be collected. Your participation is voluntary. You do not have to participate, and you can stop participating at any time. If you got in there and say, oh, I don't want to do this, just quit. Saying no to this study will in no way affect your participation in anything that Guided Autobiography or the Behrens Center does. And then I have to ask you if you're interested, so I don't need to ask you that. I can stop the share. And so I think I have taken up as much time as I need to about this. I will put it in we'll put the link to the study in the GAB chat for you. But of course, I don't have it in front of me. I have to go back and find it. Any questions about this before we move on and get into our talk for today?
Was
Any
there
thoughts,
an age
questions?
limit or requirement for the participants?
No.
It says older
No,
adults in his study.
I know. I actually asked him about that, and he said no, it didn't matter. It was any age. Because
it would be at least 18.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
I got that done. Yeah. Check that box, Steve.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but no, I asked him about that because I thought, well, we don't our groups range from 20, up to, well, our oldest person just died. I think she was 95. So we range in age for GAB instructors. But anyway, any other questions? Heather, then I think I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Nice to see so many of you here today. This is our fourth one. I just checked.
Okay, good.
And we're consistently getting between 30 and 40 people from everywhere. So it's lovely to see you all. And as a reminder, next month, it'll once again be on the third Wednesday of the month, but we do it later in the day. So keep an eye out for the newsletter to register or on the forum where we announce it. So today I have the pleasure of introducing Teresa Townsend, who I consider a new friend in my life, a virtual friend. We haven't met live, but Teresa signed up for the class that I taught for doing digital storytelling in January. And then now she just recently finished her training as facilitator with Common Language Digital Storytelling. So it's just adding to Teresa's extensive background, everything to do with storytelling, photography. She's a photo manager, legacy work. Maybe Teresa, you can more eloquently introduce yourself and your background as you launch, but I'm really excited that you're here today to talk about how we can incorporate our personal photographs into GAB classes. It's something I'm very interested in, and I'm sure others are as well. So Teresa, thanks for agreeing to be our guest speaker today, and we'll leave it to you. And I encourage people, if you do, to pin the speaker so that Teresa's bigger on the screen rather than just one of the little Brady Bunch squares. So Teresa, welcome.
Thank you, Heather. And I hope I'm have good internet on my end. Most of everyone is frozen. Am I coming through okay?
You are
Yeah, you
coming
are.
through.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting. Huh.
All right. I'm going to share my screen. I have a
Great.
slide deck to share, if that's okay.
That's great.
And hopefully, I tried to change this up a bit. Okay. Can you see my slide deck?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
we do.
looking
Great.
good.
Great. Okay, awesome. So yeah, I tried to change this up a bit from what I presented at the GAB Summit. So if you were there, hopefully there's a few new things in it. If you weren't, then it's all new, and that's great. So I'm going to be sharing mostly how I use photographs within my GAB classes, and I'll also add a few maybe photo tips along the way. But because I just find photographs so valuable and the stories behind the photographs incredibly valuable that we need to preserve. Photos and stories need each other. They complement and enhance one another, creating a rich tapestry of memories and emotions. I'm trying to fix my screen so I can see better, but I can't. Okay. So photos without a story may just be a photo to someone who doesn't know anything about it. But to the person who does know the story, it holds much more. It holds memories, emotions, and connections. So for everyone here, looking at this photo, you can, know a little bit. I mean, there's a woman walking up a path. There looks like to be a mountain to the left. She's walking up the hill. Looks like a well-worn path. Maybe she carries those buckets every day, maybe a couple of times a day. We can see it's a black and white photo, perhaps before color photography. We know that it's not a tintype or a daguerreotype or ambrotype, one of the older photographs. So, we know a little bit about the photo, but for most of us, it's not going to evoke any emotions. But for me, it does. This is my grandma, and I loved her so much. So when I see this picture, it just brings up joy and love for my grandma, who lived to be 100 years old. She had 15 children, and I was the youngest grandchild. And so I give her a lot of credit for my love of stories because, when I came along, she was an older woman, wasn't very active. And so sitting on the couch beside her and for her to tell me stories was just a gift. And So for me, this photograph says a lot to me. On the back of the photo, it is written that she is carrying water or feed to the chickens. And the question is asked on the back of the photo, why did someone build a chicken coop so far away from the house? So why include photos with GAB? Well, photos play a significant role in storytelling. They help us frame and enrich the stories we share through creating connections, evoking emotions and memories, and photos add a layer of creativity and interest to our classes. They cultivate a sense of connection and empathy to a story. They enhance stories and experiences for the audience. Think about what happens when a participant reads their story and then they share the photograph. There's connection. The audience gain a deeper understanding of the story by seeing the faces and the places of the time. You hear the, oh, look, oh, which one were you? Is that you? You know, the small child? You know, they connect more to the story by seeing the photograph. They connect us to our emotions and memories. They help us recall memories, events, senses, and emotions, and people. We often take photos to freeze time to help us remember a time. So we want to take a photograph to capture the moment. They help us recall those memories. All ages benefit from photographs. Photos trigger memories even in children. Looking at photographs can transport us back in time, often unlocking memories we had forgotten. And the more we focus on a photo, you know, zooming in on those details, the more we can recall about that moment, who was with us, where we were, what we were feeling. And if we dig a little deeper, we might even start to remember the sounds and the smells and the textures of the time, which enriches the story that we're telling. So thinking about the home theme when we're writing about home and bringing up a picture of the house we grew up in, it might trigger memories of the smells, the sounds. If we see the train track in the back of the house and the train, you know, zooming by in the middle of the night, or if we look even closer and we see a pipe on the table and we don't see the person, but we know who that pipe belonged to. You know, maybe it was grandpa or dad, and the smell that was seeped into the room from that pipe, and just the feeling of that loved one being there. So I encourage participants not to just find a picture to share with the group, but to use it as a tool to enhance their memory. I also ask them to think about how the picture makes them feel today versus the day it was taken, similar to how we use the life graph exercise. For those with memory loss, photos can be an invaluable tool. They trigger recollections that words alone may not. My mother experienced memory loss in the last few months of her life. And when she couldn't remember 5 minutes before, she could remember stories from her childhood. But the stories came more easily when looking at photographs than just asking her questions alone. Emotions. They can evoke emotions of joy, nostalgia, sadness, regret. Photos can bring out the emotions when people are focusing on the facts. I once had a participant in my GAB class email me, and she attached her story, but she said her daughter said the story was dry. And it was just the facts, ma'am. She had gone chronological order just with dates and facts. So I encouraged her to pull out some photographs and sit with them, pull out those feelings, but also to focus in on the story that she wanted to tell. Seeing loved ones that are no longer with us brings up emotions. The best vacation ever. You know, remember sitting in the hot springs, and so you have a picture of the steam coming off the water. And you can bring in the smells, but you can also remember how relaxed you felt. Can you think of a photograph that brings you joy when you look at it, just by looking at that photograph? Or one that may bring a tear? I have a photograph that I didn't realize until years later what was in that picture, but it was taken 2 weeks after my son died, and it was on Christmas Day. And we're in my parents' kitchen, and I'm sitting at the table and I'm animated. You can see I'm talking, telling a story. But in the background, I hadn't noticed this for a long time, but standing at the counter, resting up against the counter, is my dad. And he's looking at me. And to anyone just looking at the photograph, you would think he's listening to what I'm saying. But when I look closer at his face, I can see the emotions in his face, that he's looking at me and feeling sorrow, loss, and sadness for me having just lost my son and him losing his grandson. And man, when I see that picture, I lose it. And no one else would notice that. But I know, because I know the day it was taken and I know what was happening in the background. So looking at photos and seeing familiar faces or places from our past can stir up, feelings of happiness, while others bring feelings of loss or longing for times gone by. And so it's important to acknowledge those feelings, just like when someone's reading their story, looking at the photographs, giving them time, or maybe to step away from it for a while. And for some, it may be too soon after a loss. It may take years. For me, it was 25 years after my son passed that I could really look at the photos and remember the joy before he got sick. So when one can revisit those photos, it can be a healing experience for some, bringing back those joyful memories. As Heather mentioned, digital storytelling, that's my jam now. I just love it. And so in that process, we use the photos to capture moments that words often struggle to express. Sometimes we can use a photo to express what we're feeling. Sometimes a photo can lead to a tender conversation about a loved one, a place, or a moment that no longer exists in the same way. Perhaps a conversation they haven't been able or had the opportunity to share before. So I encourage people to share photos with their family now. Looking at photos with families invite questions and conversation that might not otherwise happen. Because how often do we think after a person has passed, oh, I wish I knew more. I wish I didn't know the questions to ask then. Well, perhaps if we had pulled out the photos and looked at pictures with them, we would know the questions to ask. Grandma, look at you out there on the dance floor. What are you doing? And bringing up those stories, those questions that we don't always know to ask. Photos can be a tool in bringing up those conversations. I don't have a slide for this one, but creativity and interest. In my GAB classes, photographs serve as a power conversation starters, prompting participants to really dive in to the theme. Photos are visually stimulating. It awakens the brain, imagination, senses, and they spark creativity. I use photos that relate to a theme. Visuals are important in engaging participants and keeping their attention. And it's especially helpful for those visual learners. There are 4 styles of learning: the visual, the auditory, the reading, writing, and the kinesthetic. And so it's important in our classes to reach all participants where they are and how they learn, and keeping them engaged. So print photographs. One of the things we often overlook is the tactile experience of holding a print photo in our hands, feeling the paper, the texture, the weight. It creates a different kind of engagement than scrolling through a device. There's a certain emotional connection that happens when you physically hold a photo exposed opposed to viewing it on a device. I compare it to like handwriting versus typing. It's that connection to the brain. I think it's the same thing. The act of flipping through a photo album, of sharing a print photo with someone else, adds a layer of intimacy and significance that digital photos don't replicate. Sharing photos and stories from your past with your children and grandchildren help them feel more connected to you. Families and friends, sharing photos. It gives the sense of belonging and it adds to their story. And just like in storytelling, there have been studies done on photographs, and it shows the effects of looking at print photos versus digital. And it shows an increase, and this is going to sound familiar, an increase in self-esteem, a stronger sense of identity, stronger family connections, enhanced memories of events and details, and promoted family storytelling. It also showed that all ages, from children to older adults and even teens, everyone in between, they all enjoyed print photos over digital photos. I think that, that shows a lot. I had a young man come up to me. I had a booth, and he picked up one of my family history books and he started thumbing through it. And he spent a lot of time just looking at this. And he had no relation to the book, someone else's family history. And he finally looked up at me and he said, "My generation will never have anything like this. All my family photos, all of my childhood photos are on my mom's phone." So I just can't imagine. All of my childhood photos were prints. I could have picked them up at any time and looked at them. And he doesn't have that opportunity. So I encouraged him to go home and have a talk with his mom. So as a part of my GAB class, of course, I give my participants a binder, and with the protective sleeves, but I explained that the sleeves are not archival quality and that they're only temporary housing. But for archival quality, you should look for PAT, and that stands for Photographic Activity Test. Archival Methods is a company that I trust. They use PAT on, if not all, most of their products. Gaylord is another company, but I'm not as familiar with them. I'm not 100%. You would have to check in, but just make sure you see that PAT, not just, it's acid-free or photo safe. If you really want archival quality. A Stabilo or number 2 pencil is safe for writing on the backs of photos, not ink pens or magic markers, because those chemicals will eat through them. And depending on the backs of the photos, some are slicker than others. One will work better than the other, but both are safe. And try writing on the top or the bottom and not the middle, in case you do press too hard so you don't damage the photo. And usually the top or the bottom is not as important as, and digitizing the prints, as I said, that's great for people with low vision. It's another form of backup, because now we're hearing about all the flooding and the fires. So if you have them digitized and backed up, then they're, another layer of safety. And then, of course, for sharing. And sharing the stories, capturing the stories behind the photo, just like our stories, photos are our stories, and we need the stories to go with the photos, or they're just going to get thrown out. The generations coming aren't going to want them. And I feel like we're at a unique position because some of us still have parents or grandparents living that do know the story behind the photos. As we keep going down generations, those stories are getting lost. The information behind the photos. Some more PSA that I give to my students. Of course, photos are engaging, so I encourage them to look at them with their family. Handle, especially the old photographs, handle with care. Either wash your hands really good or wear gloves, latex gloves or something, to protect the photos from the oils on your hands. And you can use a magnifying glass to identify, or especially digitizing. And if you have those old magnetic albums, get the photos out. Between the glue and the paper and the plastic covering, they're just eating away at the photographs. And digital photos have their own set of benefits. They can be viewed in a larger format, as I said, and zoomed in on an object for a closer look. This is especially helpful with those with lower vision. And I also worked with a client who had dementia, and I had scanned her photos several years before she developed dementia. And so I would bring in a computer and look at one photo at a time. And we'd only get through a few at a day, but she was able to give a little bit of information behind the photo, whereas her photo albums was just overwhelming, too much to look at one time. Yeah, and again, my mother, she suffered from low vision with her dementia, and I could zoom in on the picture and she could tell me exactly what was going on. Digitizing prints also, or, as I said, adds another layer of protection. And in a pinch, photos can be scanned on a phone app, but for archival quality and resolution, a high quality printer or scanner, or, hiring a professional to do that is the way to go. Especially, in printing books, you really want quality digital photos for that. Photos from, Facebook is just not going to cut it. And of course, if photos, your personal photos are not available, search online, either for just for your own research and your story, but there's also free photos that you can, sites that you can pull photos from. So a little more information about how I use photos with GAB. As I mentioned, I first explained what I did to you, for you today, how they evoke memories and emotions and things. And I encourage them to dig out those photos to use as resources to help in writing their stories, especially if they get stuck, or help to narrow down the story, and to find those memories, emotions, and senses. And then, of course, to use to show the group and to help explain an object of the past or other items or places that people are not familiar with. Remember, I had an elderly man, he was like 90 years old, and he mentioned something in his story, and all of us, after it was like, what is that? And he tried to explain it, but it sure would have been helpful to have a picture of that to see. Every week in my in-person classes, I have a different table theme, often using photos and other visuals. I also add a short lesson on the importance of preserving photos and preservation information. And then I've also developed another class. I haven't done this one in a while, but it was called Photo Sorts and Stories, where part of the class I would give photo organizing tips and preservation. So we would go over that, but then I would give them a theme to go home and find a photograph related to that theme and write a short story about. So it was kind of a combination of guided autobiography and photo organizing. And I found a lot of them really just wanted to spend time on organizing their photos. So I think I haven't done that one again in a while. So I don't know, we'll see. So I would really like to hear from others how you use photos in your GAB class.
Thank you, Teresa. That was great. Yeah, I want to hear how other people use it too, because as someone who's just getting rolling with classes, I want to have all the inspiration. We also have a question from Leslie. What's the name of the company that uses archival methods in their printing and mounting? Do they do photographic restoration for faded or damaged prints as well?
It was Archival Methods, and no, they don't. They're for restoring, there is one called Hollywood Photo Fix. And there's another one that I cannot think of the name. I will look at that. I'll look it up
Okay.
and look at that. But I know Hollywood Photo Fix, and there's another one. Yeah,
Okay.
but they just have archival methods is only, oh, they have every box. They have shoe size boxes. They have larger boxes for textiles. They have the tissue paper to put in with it. They have albums. They have anything you'd really want to preserve your photographs. And they're great. If you need a question, you have a question, give them a call. You get a real person with knowledgeable information.
Thanks, Teresa. Robin's asking, do you use CVS for digitizing?
No, I have my own scanners.
One thing for Canadians that live in Western Canada, I see that London Drugs will take a box of 800 photos and digitize it for $180. So that is an option. Although I've been told to be careful, make sure that the photos don't have anything else stuck on them or anything, or it could jam the machine and wreck your photo. But that's a Western Canadian option.
Yeah, and that's where in hiring a professional, they will check for that. If there's something sticky on it and they're careful, they can return your photos in order. Yeah.
Angela's asking or saying she's used Scan Digital for photos and had great results with them, or good results. So let's open.
I have a question. I have a question.
Yeah.
This is Cheryl. Thank you, Teresa. I learned a lot about all the things that my family did wrong. I mean, I have photos from my mother that have in ink written across the front of it. You know, this is Lucille, this is Martha, and on the back, you know, the date. But you know, I don't know who those people are. I remember a class that I was teaching at USC, and I use a book, I'm sure you remember, called Photo Language, written by a psychiatrist who talks about getting the story behind the photo. So for instance, your grandmother walking up the hill with those buckets, you know, I'm thinking, who in the devil took that picture? You know, who was out there at that time of whatever the day, and what, you know, why that moment were they taking it? You know, and what was she thinking? Was it something she did every day or what? So those were the types of questions that you get at, you know, with the photo language. But in the class, when I had the USC, I asked them to bring in a photo, and they just looked at me. These are like, you know, 20-plus-year-old, looked at me blankly, and they go, "Are you kidding, Dr. Svensson? We don't have any photos." You know, I go, "What do you mean you don't have any photos?" We go, "Well, all of our photos are on our Facebook, on our, what is it called, Lifeline, or whatever the history of your, you know, it's all online." I go, "Well, what happens if Facebook goes under? You know, then you don't have any of those photos. They're gone." So, I mean, I'm wondering really now, I mean, and I know myself, you know, I get together with my kids, my grandkids, and I take many digital photos. I don't know what I'm going to do with them. I mean, and I don't have them printed out. What would you recommend for even culling through, you know, the months, you know, the hundreds of digital photos that we have? And how do we keep them, or what do we do with them, or do we print? And I don't even know where to go to print them out anymore.
Yeah, you keep up with it. When you're waiting in a doctor's office or something, go through and delete those screenshots. You know, that's one way to do it. That's simple.
That's a good idea.
And just like with print photos, deciding what photos you want to keep, also find a software or that you can put them into categories, put them into albums, and just save the ones that you might want to print. Or well, when we do the print organizing, it's the original organizing, I don't often use this, but the ABCs, like your A's are your best photos, ones you would want to put in an album. The B's are your seconds that you want to keep, but maybe not put in an album. And then the C's are, you can throw them away, trash them. So that's kind of the same idea with your digital.
Yeah, and I wanted to add to that, Teresa, like if you lose your phone, and you don't have a cloud, you've
Yeah.
lost all those photos. And
Lost them.
there are apps connected to printing companies, even Chatbooks,
Oh.
one of the least expensive ones. It has an app. You can easily click, 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 and pick all the photos you want to put into Chatbook, and they'll ship it to you. And they also have a
Okay.
program which is really nice for young moms, where you do that monthly. So every month your kids are getting this cute little book with a photo on a page, and then they get to look through it. And Chatbooks also has a really cool thing. If your 3-year-old wrecks the Chatbook, they'll replace it for free because they want that experience
Wow.
that Teresa's talking about. They have also reached out to areas where people have had fires and said, we will
Oh, yeah.
replace your books for free. So these are really cool companies, and they're very family based, but
Yeah.
there are options out there.
Yeah,
Can
and
you
there are
put that
cloud
in?
services.
Sorry,
Go
Teresa.
ahead, Teresa. Go ahead, Teresa.
Oh, I was gonna say there are cloud services where you can save your photos. Of course, there's, what, Google and Amazon and different ones. Always read the fine print. Often we don't do that, but it is important because if privacy is important to you, read how they're going to use your photos. There's other programs called, like one is permanent.org. And they are a nonprofit. You can buy, certain gigabytes you can add to it. And that's a good way, to put them into albums and things. There's another one called forever.com. There are services out there that are more private than the big names that we hear about. But yeah, always, whatever you look for, read the fine print. But that is a way to ensure you have another layer of, and Apple Photos, you have that in your hand with, the Apple storage.
Right,
So
I do have that.
backing up. So
Yeah.
it's not
And
just
I,
stored on your phone.
I was
yeah,
just going to ask Heather if you'd put that Chatbooks, because that sounds perfect for me, into the if you have a
okay,
link you
yeah.
can put into the chat.
Yeah, and I wanted to, Angela's pointing out, we should be backing up twice. The experts say 3 times, once on the cloud and 2 external hard drives.
Oh.
Lisa has her photos automatically uploading to Shutterfly. So and I do the same with SmugMug. So those are both similar
Yeah,
services.
SmugMug's. Yeah, SmugMug's a great service.
And Lily says, my recommendation is to avoid reliance on proprietary apps and cloud services and use this, but also store offline on a hard drive again, and
Yes.
categorize as Lily, as Teresa has suggested. But it does get overwhelming, as you said, Cheryl, and it does take a discipline. When I was recently visiting my aunt, she had a pile of photos from her childhood and my mom's childhood. And I was realizing, there probably were a few hundred, but they were the good ones. And they were the important ones to keep. And we're in this age of more is better, but more,
Yeah,
is a real pain
right.
when you go to start sorting photos.
Yeah, and when you come home for vacation, go through those photos. You're gonna see how many photos you took of that mountain. Choose the
Oh, I
best
know.
one. You go to the zoo, take all these pictures. Do you really want the pictures of all the animals? You want
Yeah.
the pictures of the people in them.
Mhm.
Another thing, if you have an aversion to the cloud storage and you back up on hard drives, store one in your home, but store in someone else's, maybe, a family member, and you can trade. So if you have a disaster at one home, it's stored at another. And also, remember that hard drives don't last forever. You need to update them every few years. Yeah, it's overwhelming.
Can we go back to the your Teresa's question about how you are using photographs in your GAB classes? And just unmute yourself, or raise your hand and I'll invite you to unmute yourself. But we'd love to hear from you and get inspired from you.
I think Bonnie had a question. We may have lost her. Her hand got tired holding up there. Bonnie, didn't you have a question?
No, I had a comment, and I think it was my niece makes these really lovely books. I think it's Shutterfly or Shutterbug, and she does it every 3 months or 6 months for her daughter. And and all her digital, not all of her, but the selected digital pictures are in the book, and she gets a hard copy. And so both grandmas get a copy of it, and the child gets a copy of it, and it's just really wonderful. Yeah.
Oh,
Another organization that another niece has is called Back Then, and that's a way of sharing digital photos that are supposedly safer to share. So that's another potential resource for people.
Great.
Yeah,
And
that's all.
And there's some more comments related to this as well in the chat if you want to have a look and read those. So what I've started to do in my GAB classes, I just invite people, if you have a story that fits with this, what you're reading this week, and you want to share the photo, bring it along. And I do find it enhances it a lot. Teresa, I really appreciated how you talked about that. And when you talked about your dad looking at you in that photo, it actually made me think of some photos and got me all teary. And so your storytelling, even just in a presentation like this, is very impactful and really relevant to what we're doing.
I think Leslie had her hand up. Leslie, you have a comment? You're muted.
Is this off on a tangent? I put it. I put the question in the chat, but it didn't get picked up. If you're writing stories, incorporating the photos, it's a bear to put them where you want them without sort of clumping them all at the bottom or at the beginning. And a lot of apps won't reproduce the photos or will mess up the formatting. And I didn't know if somebody has found, if you're going to publish in like Blurb or chat books or whatever you choose, they make it pretty easy. But if you're trying to do it in Word so you can share in class, it gets tricky. Has anybody figured out how to do that easily?
I worked with another GAB instructor, Anita Reyes, and she actually put together, you can drop it in and you can go to the picture format and click on the square and then move it around. I can look for that handout that she created and send it to you, Leslie, because it's not that impossible. And I was just going to say that even when I was teaching, when I was just doing the teaching of the GAB instructors on my own, I would say, find a photo as you're doing, because even if you don't share it now, first of all, many people don't think you don't take your stories. They don't mean as much to you as maybe they should. You just think you're just doing these 2 pages and that's it. At some point, you're going to want to put them together into a book. And so if you're writing a story about childhood and you're writing about your mother, find a photo from that period, and even if you don't put it into the document, like I'm going to send Leslie this form, you can have it there. So at some point you may be doing that and you want to have that photo there. Plus it'll stimulate your memories, like Teresa's told us, while you're writing. You'll start to remember the clothes she wore, the smells when she was cooking, all of the different items and different senses that we use around that, story that you're telling. So I'm a visual person, so I'm a firm believer in having having the photos with you, either to later on put in. And so then it got to the point where in some of my classes, they'd put the stories into a PowerPoint. So they'd have like 5 photos and then they'd read their story and they'd say, okay, Cheryl, 1. So I'd put up 1. And then they'd say 2 when they were reading, and I'd put up photo number 2. So it really enhances the stories. In a class, if you're virtual, you can do it that way. If you're face to face, you can just have them pass it around. And it's always a conversation generator. My God, look at you at 16. Look at all that hair you had. Like I tease Steve, I look at him and I think, I wonder what he looked like at 16, with hair. He probably had curly hair or something. Anyway, you begin to see them in a different light. So I think it's a great way for the group itself, as well as for the person keeping the story.
I want to mention, Roger mentioned in the chat about VividPix, and that is a software that you can buy to enhance some of your own photos, quick fixes on them.
Anybody else who maybe hasn't used it or is thinking about, have you been inspired to think about doing it now? Anybody else have a question or comment? May's shaking her head. Come on, May, you can use it when your
Yeah,
classes.
Barbara has her hand up.
Yeah.
Go for it, Barbara.
Yeah, thanks. I had a question in the chat, but I like, well, thank you for just a wonderful, inspiring presentation. I love using photos in my classes as well. But I was curious, you mentioned the life graph, how you used that with photos in the same way that, you know, similar to how we use the life graph. And I wonder if you could just talk how you've done that.
Well, I just, like with the life graph, we often ask, or I ask, you know, how did you feel, you know, when you fill out that graph, you know, how did you feel in the moment that that experience happened versus now, you know, how do you feel about it now looking back on it? And so it's just that question of, I don't really, you know, graph or anything with the photographs, so that's an interesting thing. But but you know, looking at a photograph, do you remember how you felt the day that picture was taken?
Mhm.
You know, how, you know, there may be other memories behind that day, but now looking at it today, how does that make you feel? It's just that question. That's just similar to what we asked in the life graph.
Greg and I are doing a photo project with his sister that was recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's, similar to what you're talking about, Teresa. And she's really freaked out about the memories disappearing very understandably. And so we put a photo or two up every week and then just ask her to remember. And then usually I act as a scribe and just start writing it down. And then we want to produce a book that has the photo and the story. And it's just a really powerful way to connect with her and allow her to continue to be seen and heard through this challenging time.
I think Steve Hoover might have something to add about photos with working with cognitively impaired, because I know you've done that, Steve, right?
Yeah, when I was working with the people with early dementia in the GAB class, what many of them would do would be to bring in pictures that supported the stories that they were telling, and then they would pass those around while they were telling the story or reading their stories. We found that they enjoyed the pictures so much that we had them first read the story and then send the pictures around, because they really weren't listening to the stories. They were so interested in the pictures, and one gentleman would ask questions about the stories while the guy's trying to read a picture while he's trying to read the story. So we had to make some adjustments to how they were submitted. But yes, one wife who was the care provider, she used those each week to get her husband to to spark the memories for his stories each week. So she used them quite extensively. They had a lot of pictures.
Nice.
I think it's a great tool especially for caregivers. I just know with my mom, she was angry with me all the time because, you know, her husband had passed. So I would come in and I was the one, of course, that she could unload on. But, you know, when we sat down to look at the photos, it just took her to a whole nother happy place. I always called that our escape door. So I think, you know, for caregivers, it's a great way to connect with the person in a happy place. Usually, hopefully, if they have happy memories of the photos.
Yeah. Wow.
And they're also a great tool if they're in assisted living or in any kind of a you know, convalescent type hospital, for the people who come in to see them, especially if they're either, I don't know, you could do like a collage of photos, or you could have a book, something that tells the story to the people dealing with this quote patient, that's not, they haven't always been a stroke patient, that they have a past, that they have a history, that there's something about them that if you can look at this book or look at these photos and remember, you begin to see them more holistically and compassionately, I think.
Yeah. I created a poster for an aunt that was oh my goodness, she was in the nursing home for like 15 years.
Yeah.
And then after, you know, she became nonverbal but I created a poster. She loved animals. So I, you know, filled it with pictures of her and her animals, on
Yeah.
her wall so the staff could come in and see, oh, this is the person oh, look, she loved
Right.
animals, you know, it just, so it was a quick
Right.
look. They didn't have to take time to look through a book or anything. They could just have a quick
Right.
look at who she was.
That's great.
Any looking for more hands or no? Okay, so this is the portion of our monthly GAB chats where we open up the floor and let you gab about whatever you want. What we'd like to start with though is, do you have any subjects you'd like us to focus on moving forward with other
Yeah.
GAB chats into the future? Anybody? Unmute yourself and everybody's quiet today.
Well, let's have some ideas. Heather and I are running out of them.
Well, I think there's endless, but yeah.
Yeah. But we want it to be something you're interested in.
Yeah.
I will tell you that in September, we're looking at doing new classes. We have new courses coming out. So we've got September, pretty much, and we've got November, but we're looking at August. So what would be interesting? What is some topic that you'd like more information on or like to talk about, or anything that's guided autobiography related or life story writing related?
Sure.
For August.
Cheryl, this is John. I have.
Hi, John.
Hi. I have a group, my first group, that's been together over 2 years now, and we've written on probably close to 20 themes, and everyone's trying to pull it all together into a book. And I think the question everybody's trying to figure out for themselves is, how do I want to integrate all of this? How do I structure it? How do I, what kind of flow, or again, I guess the best word is structure, what I'm going to, how this final product might look. So I'd be interested in hearing from other people's experiences of how they've gone through that process of integrating and summarizing what they've written.
So it's kind of self-publishing, or how to take the stories, which vary because of guided autobiography. I mean, it's not chronological, how to put them together into a book and experience. That's a great idea, actually. Do any of you here have experience with that? I mean, I know Lily does a self-publishing. There you go. Robin, you're holding up our book. Our
I'm
anthology.
holding up this book that I've been reading and I love. So this is something that was put together by the Behrens Center. And the title is, it's a theme, The Gift of Long Life, whatever, personal stories on the aging experience. So it was structured by a theme, and every person's theme on that topic was included. So that, who was asking the question?
That was John Kane.
Oh, is that what you already said? Because I went to get it. Maybe it was already said.
But Robin, to clarify, that one's like an anthology, correct?
Right. Yeah. It is. It's the Behrens Center anthology.
Yeah. And John, are you thinking of an anthology for your existing group, or each individual is trying to integrate?
The latter. It's really more about each person finding their own way, to both go back and perhaps, I think that there seem to be two things to do. And well, in addition to how do I structure it, what gaps do I have? What hasn't been said that I want to make sure that I get down. I mean, I think everyone's feeling in where we've been after a couple of years is not that we don't enjoy continuing to go on, but there's a desire to get something finished.
Yeah.
I want something done. So how do I get it done? And how do I go through a process of thinking about what's unsaid that needs to be said? I guess they're related issues.
Leslie, Leslie has her hand up. Maybe Leslie has
Liz Dasa and I did something informally about self-publishing, some easy to more difficult ways, looking at things like the various chat books. Blurb has a couple, does some things that are fairly easy. the going all the way through Amazon, not in tremendous depth, but at least laid out some of the options. I don't know that we would be prepared to do something the level of detail folks would want here, but I would be happy to contribute if somebody else wants to take the lead on that.
Well, we could maybe consider doing it like a panel if people have things in place. Judith, do you wanted to say something?
Hi, I don't know whether this is more relevant to a class that I get involved in, but I have written about a third of my life story, and it's chronological to about age 20. The rest of it, I've written a lot, but it's themes, and it's organized by themes, not chronologically. And I'm pretty sure of the titles of the themes, but I don't know where to go from here. Some of it would have to be chronological, and I wonder whether that could be discussed at all.
So that's similar to what John's looking at.
That's exactly what John's asking. So, you know, I want to ask John, how many stories, after you've been at 2 years, how many stories approximately does each person have?
I think about 20. I think we're
20.
up to
Okay.
about 20
well,
things.
I tell you, we took Dr. Biren wrote often with the classes, and he wrote. So anyway, we had, I think, like 50 of Dr. Biren's stories, and we put them into a book for him and his memoir. So they ended up, once you take all those stories and start spreading them out, they begin to go into groups like early childhood. You know, he'd talk about his father, he'd talk about his mother, he talked about, you know, going out and riding on the milk wagon during the Depression, you know, and then you go into adolescence. And then he had his life after Betty, you know, when he met his wife, and the beginning of that, and the beginning of the family. And then he had one about career. And so we put them all together because they kind of group themselves in areas. It's not, we never thought about it as chronological. I mean, at least the writings were never meant to be chronological, but they kind of grouped themselves that way. And then, you know, I'd point out to him, I go, well, Jim, you've got 3 children and you never mention them, because I'm telling you, the one thing when you write these books, your kids, they want to know, what did they say about me, or what did they, I go, you better. And so he went back, you know, it's kind of funny to me anyway. As a mother, he said something like, oh, Jeff was born at, you know, 4:45, and Betty said it wasn't a difficult birth. You know, that was Jeff's is now taken care of. And then he'd go over to Barbara. You know, Barbara was born on such and such a day. I mean, it was very rote, if I can use a better word to say it. But anyway, he got it in there because one of the things you've got to think about, who's going to be reading these books. So somehow putting it into little groups, John, I would think. And the other thing, because I was just in Steve finished a training last night, and I was in the class with him, and I think this is when it was mentioned. There's the 6-word memoir. And if you can take 6 words for your title, the title of your story, and then, you know, it somehow is the major overarching theme, you know, of where you are and what the book is about, or who you are. And you just, everything else, I think, is going to fall into some one of those categories. And it's going to, and you can, in Dr. Biren's book, I have it here on my bookcase, you know, it's divided, you know, into chapters, you know, like early childhood, and then, you know, adolescence, and then life with Betty. So I think but I think the important thing is, John, I agree with you. They want to see something come out of it.
Yeah.
You know,
May I add?
Oh, yeah, please, Lily.
Yeah. I want to say that we've had probably about 10 of our students who've written books and finished their memoirs and bounded and done stuff like that. One of the as part of our sessions, one theme, and I think it is part of the GAB too, where you come up with a title, which is adding to your suggestion about the 6-word title. But I think the first thing that we ask our students to do is the purpose of their book. You know, if it's for a family or a community or a general audience, or for educational use, you know, then you would have to tell your stories, the tone and the length and the complexity for that particular reader's interest. So first they have to clarify who their audience is and what the purpose it is. And then the second thing is they have to focus on a unifying theme. You know, we had one student who decided that she just wanted to write about her travel stories. And she didn't have kids that she wanted to leave this to, but she had some very interesting travel stories. So she identified that she wanted to do travel, and another one wanted to do like a food book because all her stories were around food. So, so they could identify, a key theme or thematic sections or chapters that that Cheryl suggested. And then I think they should collect their stories, put them in one place, whether it's digitally or, handwritten, and then sort them, by either the theme, the timeline, or any type of clarity that they have. And then, I'd say that they can make a simple outline, which is like a table of contents. And I think that can help you spot any missing links or themes for you to fill in. And and then I think after that, they could expand on stories, whether it was details or dialogue or revise or trim, or ensure that it connects to the broader theme that they're going for and that it's not repetitive. Right now, we're working on helping one of our students who wrote a lot of stories, but he decided he was going to do a micro memoir, which is very short stories. That's not necessarily following a theme. It's a mosaic structure that we're helping him organize and put into a micro memoir format. So I think they could also seek input and revise, like, share a draft with some trusted readers or peers, for feedback so
Yeah,
that they can help them.
Lily, I was, as you were saying that, I was thinking it should be someone that's very close to them who knows their life and might have some insight, like Cheryl said about
Yep.
Dr. Beer. And what about your kids? Like I think someone close in their circle would find the gap better than a GAB instructor would.
That's probably true. And then, after all of that, if they wanted for a broader audience, then they'd have to look into editors or formatting or, self-publishing.
Yeah.
Teresa.
Lily, that was very helpful. That was
Yeah.
a great summary. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that was really good.
Outstanding.
But it also, with us talking about maybe this being a theme of one of the GAB chats, and I wondered if it could be a panel of people like Lily, who obviously has thought this through. I think it'd be really cool, John, to see what your students have written about and to see, even as outsiders, if there's things that we get ideas about or inspired. Elizabeth, you put a question in here, turning points question. Do you want to elaborate what that one means? Elizabeth? No. Is Elizabeth still here?
What I was referring to was sort of chronological, but emphasizing the turning points in an individual's life. In other words, when they change from one thing. So you almost have a theme of turning points where things interrupted or interfered and you went into another direction type of thing. So you're using a chronological, but emphasizing where things have changed.
Yes.
Interesting idea, yeah.
And Elizabeth, when I'm looking at, here is Dr. Beeren's book. Oh God, why can't I? It's called James E. Beeren, a memoir, and this is his own handwriting that we put on it, 210 pages. I looked at it now. We have part 1, my story up to 24, starting out, various homes, new awakenings, college. And then part 2 is my career. So this kind of goes into what Elizabeth was saying. Chapter, New Life with Betty and New Career. Chapter 6, University of Southern California. Chapter 7, UCLA. Part 3 are Values and Reflections, reminiscing, looking back, the Beeren family stories. So the book is put together and then added photos. We put photos, in there with it, different photos. And then this was also one of, I've inherited Jim Beeren's books, many of them. This was one that he loved, the 6-word memoirs. And I just picked up this one in here. And I know that he has these little tabs on him. His title was Still Trying to Impress My Dad. If you had a theme or like a title for your book, and then the other things would just kind of fit into it somehow. So I think these are all very rich ideas.
Carol, I have one quick question on
Yeah,
that, and for
yeah.
all of you. Man, I guess it's kind of at what point do you come up with that 6-word title to help you structure it?
Well, in a GAB session, a real one, if you went through Jim Byrne's original, it was session number 9 because it was like at the end. Because he wanted them all to feel that they could take those 9 stories that they had written and put it into a binder, a book, something, and to give it a title.
Okay.
So it was at
That's
the
right.
end. You know,
Yeah,
it's
you
when
reminded me of that, right? It
yeah,
has to be at least at some point toward the
yeah,
end.
after you've written enough that you have a sense of who you are and who you've been, and you know, maybe thinking about where you're going to go next.
Okay. Thanks.
Lisa had a question, and this ties in again with what we're talking about. What companies do you recommend for actually bounding the stories into a book? Binding, yeah.
Carol, don't we have a list that's provided to GAB instructors with options?
We do. I think it's one of the in my portion of the recorded ones. I think it's one of the handouts. Yeah. But you know that it changes all the time, right?
Yep.
I mean, just keeping current with this. So probably anything from Teresa or Heather or anybody, or we could, you know, I think that anybody else have something other than putting the stories together into something or
And also,
self-publishing. Yeah, that
I also want to encourage people to use the forum to have these conversations and share your resources as well. You know, it's a really inexpensive annual membership. What, $125, Cheryl?
Right.
And it's well worth it. And the more of us that use it, the more valuable it gets. So
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I've helped clients go, on after a GAB class to go on to publish their book just for themselves. But I would like to know if anyone, has a class just for those who want to go on and print a book beyond the GAB class.
I was looking at Alice because Alice, I believe you put together stories for your group in a book, and I'm wondering how you did it or how you might talk about that.
Okay. In my case, I was blessed to have Filipinos attend a Zoom online, and I think one of them accidentally came to our chat. Um, there were there were no expert writers, there were no expert layout artists that we did, but we were able to come up with a book. It's called Our Second Spring. So what we did was to select our best pieces from the GAB themes that we wrote about. And our initial intent was to just give it as a Christmas gift to our family and to our communities. So what we did was we even placed our own hand-drawn trees of life, and we made it into like a game. So there are 4 of us. So the reader participates in the sense that they'd have to identify whose tree of life has been referred to. And since we had no budget for this, it was my daughter who laid out everything, including old photographs. It's a book that I would say is a vanity book because we were able to do it in a year's time while meeting every week online. It was like a project with a lot of knowledge, with a lot of courage, and also trust in one another. There was no expert editing because one of my friend who edits just told me we don't like to change the voice, so if it's going to be a vanity project for your family and friends, so we would like to retain the voice, the authenticity of what you have written. And at the back of the book, what we did was, since I was so fond of doing screenshots, so we placed selected screenshots of how we were able to come up with the book. We had a mini launch among family members and friends. We had a video story made by one of the 4 of us who did video story. And it might interest you since there are 4 of us Filipinos meeting online. Previously strangers turned to friends. What we initially thought about as a series of books was to do it on a seasonal basis. So we started with the second spring, and just yesterday we met again online as a sort of like an alumni reunion, and since the three others have not been using ChatGPT, I was obliged to teach them how to do ChatGPT. And as a result, and as a result, they said, "Oh, this time it's going to be a lot easier to do it since we did experimenting how we can convert one story to one which is humorous, one in the tone of a certain author." And I guess I'll be having my first GAB class among that small group of GAB classmates that I had in the past. And since we started with spring, we're thinking we'll do it summer this time. So probably in our lifetime, we'll complete the seasons of life into books that may not be for commercial purposes, but at least this will be good reasons for us to continue writing as our own stories.
And what
And
was
hopefully, yeah,
what was the publishing company you used, Alice? Did you say?
no, it's none. We publish it on our own, but we place it out in Amazon. And
But no, but how was the physical book? What company
yeah,
printed it?
Amazon.
Oh,
Because
Amazon.
So Amazon did it.
yeah,
Katie
so
did it.
if you the only problem is we had to edit it twice since the initial formatting was not suitable for Amazon,
Okay.
for the Amazon app. But it came out good because we're proud, and it gives you a different sense of pride when you, even if the
Yeah.
writing is not as good, but it was written by me. It's one concrete evidence that writing your story, even if you are not a writer, is worth it. It's because having your first book and your name on it, and what we did was we had our old photos and new photos, current photos,
Oh, great.
and it's really a very good souvenir of the GAB experience that we had. Something that I always show to people. I was able to do it. We were able to do it. We were not writers. We were not layout artists, but it was a vanity, and we were able to accomplish something.
I have to give Alice credit. She's in the Philippines, and right now, if my clock is correct, it's 2:20 in the morning for you.
Wow.
She always looks like she just always looks perfect,
I
which
know.
I don't understand, Alice. But anyway, the thing I love about this is taking that family, the tree of your life, and then having it for all of you, and then the reader then has to, it's like being a detective. You have to figure out which tree goes to which stories. I think, it's a great thing. I love the fact that you did that. I think it's a really gift to your group. And all GAB writers, nobody comes in as a writer, so we're in that same group of usually non-professional writers that kind of grow into it and get better at writing as we write. So I think thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Alice. That was great. Very inspiring. And again, I think if people let go of perfectionism and just get it done, they'll feel really great. Yeah, Lily, you had your hand up.
Alice mentioned something that made me think of a topic for the GAB chat.
Yeah.
And that is, she talked about training in ChatGPT so they could have their stories rewritten in the style of an author, and maybe do some of that. So I would love to have a GAB chat in terms of how do you retain authenticity and and all of that in the AI age, and how do we as GAB instructors feel about using AI tools in the storytelling world.
We could combine that with the self-publishing. I mean, couldn't that be part of it, using chat? So, I mean, we would have, Lily, are you up for August? Let's see, I think our next meeting is August 20th. It's a Wednesday. We do it the third Wednesday of the month. But anyway, we would definitely want you a part of that.
I will be in Austria. I
Oh,
don't know.
I know I will be in Sweden, and the time is like the middle of the night for us. But
Yeah.
anyway, we can think about that.
Yeah, but that's something I've been thinking about heavily as, you know, you
Yeah.
go through this, and as I'm helping authors with their work,
Right.
you know, our authors.
I agree. You know,
Yeah.
it's one thing, and it would be interesting, Alice, if you did this with the group using the Chat GPT, how it's different from the voice of the one that you have now, the voice of the stories in the book that you have. Because I think that, to me, the beauty of GAB writing is that it's their stories. It's not, you know, touched by AI.
Yes, yes.
Anyway.
Actually, okay. Actually, I just met with them yesterday, and
Yeah.
it was an introduction to ChatGPT because they were not using it. So I said, okay, this is just how we did it, and we just played around with
Yeah.
ChatGPT.
That's
Just
fun.
think of, and we thought about a topic from strangers to friends, from strangers to friends. So we created our own prompts, and we just so we realized that it can cut short the writing process, but definitely we'll have to edit everything to put in the authenticity that we
Yeah.
are trying to maintain in doing our stories.
Right.
Because definitely, ChatGPT will give you a nicely created article or a piece, but you will notice that it's not written by you. Because for me, I think the imperfections make our stories authentic or
Right.
true to
That's
life,
right.
because yeah, not written by a robot
Right.
or by
Right.
ChatGPT.
Who else has anything to add to this? Have we gotten all the questions that were in the chat?
Steve mentions in here his students compiled all of their stories over several years and used Publish to create the book Memories and Musing, an anthology of vintage Minnesotians.
Oh, I like it. Hold that up again, Steve. Steve, hold it up again.
You had the blur, it's not working. Closer, closer. Wait, no,
How
no.
many pages is it, Steve?
250.
Yeah. No, that's great.
Yeah, and it was 2 students that took it on, and they got a grant from a local arts community grant thing to pay for it.
Oh, that's good. That's
Great.
even better. Something else to bring up for GAB instructors.
Well, thank you, Teresa, for being our presenter today. I think you've given us a lot to think about, and definitely inspired me to kind of giving me permission to use photographs more and make it a part of what we do in our classes. And thanks to everybody for thoughts for moving forward. It definitely there's a lot of interest in creating, compiling and creating books from the stories with our students. And I think it's great if we have that in our back pocket to know and refer them to sources, because I think it is a really important part of that. And I think Alice really emphasized that what that feeling of completion does for us as writers, as storytellers. So I think
that's it.
We're done for this month. And we will keep an eye out in your inbox. Make sure you're getting your emails and on the forum for what's upcoming and what people are sharing. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
So nice
Thanks,
to see
everybody.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa.
Bye.